I honestly did not care whether I lived or died. But now, I can...
You think if he... you think if he didn't go to death row, would he still be alive?
Wow. It's hard to say.
I can't leave until this shit's straight. You know, I'm not... I can't go until y'all really know what time it is.
Is there a part of you that thinks it's time for me to get back in the studio, or you're in no rush to do that, or are you waiting till the time is right for you?
Yeah, I think...
Because we can't use the word retirement for you.
Yeah. No, I already did that. I can't do that ever again. I would say I want to make music, but it has to be something important. I don't want to just make a bunch of tunes.
For Diddy to come on stage, pat him on his ass, and then make the statement to people in the world that can't nobody call me Sean but Jay-Z.
Somebody said Tupac is coming back this year and stuff. Well, I've been back, you know.
Something that shouldn't be conceivable recently happened in the digital world. The weight of one name is practically melting social media sites. Tupac Shakur, not as a remembrance or an homage, but as a real, breathing typhoon that is going to destroy 2 decades of falsehoods and scandals that you have seen. Forget about Hollywood breakdowns. The murmurs aren't only saying that hip-hop's most famous person survived his gunshot in Vegas. They're saying that everything else is merely hearsay. For over 30 years, they've been shouting that he's been planning retribution from Cuba. The hashtags say it all. Diddy exposed and hashtag Jay's secrets are not just trending, they are taking over every feed, destroying Kardashian coverage and celebrity divorces like digital tsunamis. The servers at Twitter are having a hard time. There are a lot of shaky videos on TikTok. Instagram has become a battlefield of conspiracy theorists and skeptics flinging evidence back and forth like grenades. But this isn't simply another online phenomena. This is different. This is worrisome since the allegations aren't coming from random accounts or attention-seeking trolls. They're surfacing from business insiders, former bodyguards, and those who genuinely know the participants in this deadly game. Veterans of the hip-hop battles are breaking decades of silence, talking of Cuban safe homes, protection, and evidence that may ruin 2 of music's largest empires. The core assertion is nuclear in its simplicity. Tupac Shakur didn't die in 1996. He vanished. He skillfully retreated into the shadows, protected by Fidel Castro's higher-ups, stockpiling ammunition against the adversaries who wanted to assassinate him. And now, with Jay-Z and Diddy more vulnerable than they've ever been, he's apparently preparing to explode 3 decades of well-held secrets. The question that keeps industry leaders up at night isn't whether this is true. It's what happens to hip-hop's power structure if the world thinks it's real. Because in the court of public opinion, belief is frequently more powerful than evidence. The Cuba idea isn't simply wild guesswork. It's founded on familial relationships that stretch deeper than most people realize. Tupac's aunt, Assata Shakur, has been living in a Cuban asylum since 1984 after escaping from a New Jersey jail. She was a renowned character in the Black Liberation Army and the Black Panthers. Exactly the type of refugee that Castro's administration preferred to defend as a middle finger to American authorities.
Instead of us just being like, slavery's bad, slavery's bad, bad whitey, bad whitey. I mean, all right, let's stop that. And everybody's smart enough to know that, we've been slighted, and we want ours.
What did he say that day when he called you?
You know, I had my guys with me, Thug Life guys, and we heard what he had to say. He basically said he ain't have nothing to do with my brother's murder.
Think about the time frame. September 1996, Tupac is shot in Vegas. The official tale states he dies 6 days later, but conspiracy theorists point to worrisome holes in the narrative. Nobody but medical workers and his mother ever saw him after the incident. The coroner's findings inexplicably contradicted his recognized height. The funeral worker who reportedly performed his cremation fled without a trace shortly thereafter. Former security personnel have been muttering for years about late-night flights to Caribbean islands, about body doubles used to complete the illusion, about Fidel Castro personally granting asylum to America's most dangerous rapper. The logistics weren't difficult. Castro has been thumbing his nose at Washington for decades by hiding American fugitives as political dissidents.
Real. I've laid out the facts for you, America. It's time to spread the truth. Wake up, America.
Man, I'll give you $1 million, whatever it takes. You know, it's like exaggerated speech. But of course, when we interview Keefe D's, like, yeah, that's the agreed amount. was $1 million.
It's 2020, y'all. Yeah. And it's different than when it was 2016. You know, the game has been elevated. As we can tell, there's no expense being spared. We had a black billionaire's lunch. Yeah. You understand? Right. And we here together, and we're going to keep staying together.
Here's why some people find this theory truly terrifying, though. Tupac wasn't merely hiding if he lived. He was getting ready. He would have had unheard of access to Cuban intelligence networks, international contacts, and, most importantly, time to establish a solid case against all those who had betrayed him during his 30 years of exile. Consider the tactical edge. Your enemies settle in because everyone thinks you're dead. They are fallible. They boast about inappropriate things. As you covertly record every crime, betrayal, and secret that could bring them down decades later, they construct empires on the basis of your alleged murder. The Cuba connection turns Tupac from a murder victim into something much more dangerous. A ghost with international resources, covert protection, and almost 30 years of meticulously gathered evidence against those who believed they had put an end to the most dangerous truth-teller in hip-hop. Tupac wouldn't simply be alive if Castro's administration truly provided sanctuary. He would be financially supported, untouchable, and intensely driven to settle all scores from the afterlife.
Getting high with your chick in my Jeep. Give me the keys so we can leave.
Guys are so deep and involved in this that Diddy just might be called up on that Tupac shit.
So we don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
The Tupac and Cuba theory has been fueled by even those closest to the core of hip-hop's biggest mystery. The only person who sat next to Tupac the night he was shot, Suge Knight, has never entirely agreed with the official version of events. Nothing about Tupac's death felt final, Suge has reflected in prison interviews. He recalled their final moments together, describing Tupac as lucid, humorous, and very different from the picture of a man nearing the end of his life. "You never know," Suge's famous quote with Pac still haunts society. Later, he would say on television that Tupac was the one who would have staged his own exit.
Oh, is Pac dead? Is Pac alive? I'm the wrong axe. But I tell you this, if you try to find a person who cremated Tupac, after he supposed cremated Tupac, he retired and vanished into the sun, into the sunset.
And it wasn't limited to secret lyrics or hush circles. The concept also made its way into the mainstream media. Talk show hosts and television personalities have frequently allowed rumors to spread by making comments on air regarding sightings, strange resemblances, or the impossibility of so many coincidences surrounding Tupac's purported death. The impression that some puzzle pieces aren't meant to fit together by accident was only strengthened by the fact that these errors occurred in real time on platforms that millions of people were watching.
Didn't actually die in '96 and is still alive and well. Suge Jr. has been posted.
But I'm still a little suspicious about the timing and how it's all rolled out here.
Yeah, it's been about 20 plus years, man, and they finally doing something about it, man.
Oh, 27, brother. 27.
These growing oddities are viewed as more than coincidental by the fan community. Supporters maintain that this cannot be a coincidence when considering Suge's open-ended remarks, the TV host's errors, the coroner's enigmatic report, and Tupac's own lyrics that foretell his demise. Every slip and unclear hint in the whirlpool of rumors and legends adds to Tupac's uncannily alive presence. However, social media buzz isn't the only fear that haunts industry boardrooms. Legal teams go into a panic when the alleged existence of physical evidence is brought up because it is so devastating. We're discussing a banned manuscript, an extensive dossier that, according to conspiracy theorists, has been kept hidden in Cuban vaults for almost 30 years. This isn't just conjecture. Intelligence insiders and former CIA agents have been subtly implying that Castro's government did more than simply provide sanctuary for Tupac. They assisted him in creating what is essentially the most dangerous document in the history of music, a thorough expose that identifies individuals, details crimes, and makes connections between dots that influential people have spent billions of dollars attempting to keep separate.
So do you believe that Tupac's alive and well? Supposedly he's in Cuba working on new material.
Do you think Puffy was involved in the shooting?
Only they can answer that question. I have my own opinion, but I wouldn't slander their name like they did mine. I wouldn't say things that I knew, you know what I mean? I believe so. I do believe so.
Chapters about systematic artist exploitation, financial laundering schemes, violence coordination, and cover-up operations that extend well beyond hip-hop into mainstream entertainment and international business are whispered about by industry veterans. According to the allegations, Tupac spent years recording each betrayal as an investigative journalist and victim, and the manuscript reads like a criminal encyclopedia. Documents, however, can be written off as fake. On the other hand, audio recordings are completely different. According to sources, during the mid-1990s, Tupac surreptitiously recorded dozens of private conversations in which Jay-Z and Diddy discussed everything from violent retaliation against industry rivals to contract manipulation.
I don't believe that. Because I believe Tupac didn't die. Really? You think Tupac's still alive? For real, for real? Vlad believes everything he reads.
These aren't freestyle recordings or studio sessions. These are purportedly business gatherings where criminal plots were explicitly planned. Talks about eradicating rivals, stealing rights to publications, intimidating witnesses, and working with street-level law enforcement to find long-term solutions. Not only would these recordings harm people's reputations if they were discovered, but they would also give prosecutors solid proof in RICO cases. Even the quality of the audio is irrelevant. Even deteriorated recordings from decades ago can now be forensically verified thanks to the rapid advancements in voice recognition technology. With multiple recordings over a number of years, it would be impossible to convincingly mimic Diddy's speech rhythms and Jay-Z's unique vocal patterns. According to current legal experts, federal prosecutors are already aware of these possible evidence caches and have been subtly constructing cases that will include new evidence should it come to light. For both moguls, the timing couldn't be worse. While Jay-Z deals with numerous civil lawsuits and a crisis related to his reputation, Diddy is already facing charges of racketeering. This evidence wouldn't be complete if Tupac was actually assisted by Cuban intelligence. It would be strategically devastating, legally admissible, and expertly planned. Evidence produced by organization-backed intelligence collection is taken seriously by courts, particularly when it concerns alleged crimes committed by U.S. citizens abroad. The worst-case scenario, Tupac reappears as a state-protected witness with government-verified evidence that could start the biggest criminal investigation in entertainment history, rather than as a rapper out for vengeance. There is no coincidence in the timing of these claims of Tupac's resurrection. It's calculated psychological warfare that has been started just when Diddy and Jay-Z are most at risk of further scandals. Years of work by federal prosecutors have resulted in cases that now appear to be unfinished puzzles, lacking important components that could only be found in Tupac's purported evidence. Prosecutors have compared Diddy's current legal nightmare to Jeffrey Epstein's operation, with federal charges for coercion, sex trafficking, and racketeering that read like a criminal enterprise manual. Financial records showing exploitation, witness accounts detailing decades of industry-wide intimidation, and thousands of hours of recorded footage from notorious parties are among the evidence that has been seized.
Near fatal, but he couldn't survive a second. Rap star Tupac Shakur last night after a brief life in a rough business. He was 25.
Jay-Z is in an equally vulnerable position. He has been charged in recent cases with financial misconduct, contract manipulation, and collusion to conceal crimes in the industry. If recordings of his alleged criminal activity turn up, it could ruin his carefully cultivated image as a reformed street hustler who established a legitimate business empire. Legal experts point out that there are issues with missing links in both cases. Despite their inability to show long-term coordination of criminal enterprises, prosecutors are able to present isolated incidents. These missing links might be found in Tupac's purported recordings, particularly if they show business meetings where illegal plans were hatched years in advance. The terrain of federal investigations has also changed significantly. These days, prosecutors have access to sophisticated tools for evaluating evidence that dates back decades, international collaboration for obtaining materials in other nations, and the drive to pursue high-profile cases that highlight the efficacy of the legal system. According to intelligence sources, federal agencies have been surreptitiously keeping an eye on communications from the Cuban government in search of opportunities for this type of intelligence. American prosecutors would probably be aware of Tupac's evidence before conspiracy theorists on social media if it were true, and Cuban authorities were thinking about making it public. The storm is perfect. Social media is generating public pressure for justice. International tensions are creating intelligence opportunities. Two moguls are facing serious criminal charges, and federal prosecutors are in need of groundbreaking evidence. The legal vulnerability is real, whether Tupac is still alive or not. However, Suge Knight, the only person present when the bullets flew, provides the most damning evidence for the Tupac survival theory. Furthermore, there are unsettling contradictions in his prison testimony that point to a much darker motive than a random drive-by shooting. The night of September 7, 1996, was planned from several perspectives by individuals Tupac trusted, according to Suge's compelling testimony. One of death row's exclusive radio systems, military-grade communication devices that operated all the way from San Diego to Oregon on the West Coast, had inexplicably been acquired by Snoop Dogg. These radios were intended to be returned right away after use and were only given out for designated security operations. If Snoop didn't need to coordinate with someone on a particular matter, why would he have kept one? Later, Warren G. acknowledged that Snoop was at his house using his radio to watch the Tyson fight. Witnesses heard Snoop say, "They got him," over the radio as the gunfire erupted in Vegas. They got him, as if he was verifying a mission accomplished, instead of "what happened" or "is everyone safe?" What's even more suspicious is that Snoop abruptly changed his mind and told associates they were going to Louisville instead of the Vegas fight. Even more bluntly, Nate Dogg stated that he didn't have to be near those ends and that he didn't have to be concerned about being hit by a stray bullet as long as he wasn't standing next to Suge or Tupac. This nervousness was no accident. This was sophisticated, planned violence knowledge. The Jay-Z-Diddy connections get really scary at this point. According to recent federal court documents, Diddy allegedly offered Dwayne Keefe D. Davis $1 million in exchange for the hits on Suge Knight and Tupac.
I'm like, man, shut up, I'm gonna get you to the doctor.
So he was conscious on the way to the hospital?
He was conscious on the way to the hospital, he was conscious in the ambulance, he was conscious.
Man, I'll give you $1 million, whatever it takes. You know, it's like exaggerated speech. But of course, when we interview Keefe D, it's like, yeah, that's what the agreement amount was, $1 million.
This was not an isolated incident of gang violence. This was a well-thought-out business move intended to remove the greatest challenges to death row records and pave the way for the supremacy of Bad Boy and Rockefeller. The rise to prominence of Jay-Z's career speaks for itself. Reasonable Doubt, his debut album, was released in 1996, the year Tupac is said to have passed away. Jay-Z transformed from an obscure Brooklyn hustler to a major force in the industry in the months following Tupac's disappearance. Coincidence? Or strategic timing that eliminated the most significant barrier to his ascent? Here's why the present is so important. Diddy and Jay-Z are now more legally exposed than ever before. Diddy is accused of witness tampering, sex trafficking, and federal racketeering. Jay-Z's once untouchable status has been undermined by a number of civil lawsuits and a crisis with his reputation. It wouldn't be amateur recordings if Cuban intelligence actually assisted Tupac in gathering thorough evidence against these titans of the industry. It would be strategically devastating, legally admissible, and expertly planned. Evidence produced by government-sponsored intelligence collection is taken seriously by courts, particularly when it concerns alleged crimes committed by U.S. citizens abroad. Even Suge Knight, who frequently says with Pac, "You never know," declines to provide a definitive confirmation of Tupac's passing. During live broadcasts, television hosts have unintentionally made remarks regarding sightings and survival theories. Supporters maintain that these cannot be coincidences. The number of inconsistencies is excessive. The ultimate nightmare scenario, Tupac returns as a state-protected witness with government-validated evidence that could start the biggest criminal investigation in entertainment history, rather than as a rapper out for revenge. Too many people acting as though they know something the public doesn't. At this point, however, the narrative shifts from conspiracy theory to cultural revolution. The impact on hip-hop's power structure is absolutely nuclear, regardless of whether Tupac is still alive physically in exile in Cuba or spiritually due to the growing evidence against his alleged killers. Because the survival of one rapper isn't the only issue here, it concerns the revelation of decades of violence, exploitation, and corruption in the music industry that have shaped contemporary music. Unsettling trends that go well beyond personal conflicts to organized crime have already been uncovered by the federal investigation into Diddy and Jay-Z. In what amounts to a mafia operation masquerading as a record label, court documents describe financial manipulation, witness tampering, intimidation, and violence coordination. The missing pieces that turn individual prosecutions into RICO cases involving the entire industry could be found in Tupac's purported evidence, whether it comes from American intelligence archives or Cuban government vaults.
Apparently, there was supposed to be $1 million that Zip was supposed to bring back, but he ended up keeping the money and buying a nightclub with it. The story that has circulated was that after Tupac got killed, Puffy allegedly gave the money to Zip.
Yes.
And Zip was supposed to give the money to Keefe and them.
Yes.
But he never gave the money.
By starting their own labels, claiming master recordings, and avoiding traditional gatekeepers through social media, contemporary artists are already battling for their independence. Tupac becomes the symbol that brings disparate acts of resistance together into a concerted uprising against the entire system if he proves to be the ultimate revolutionary elder, either physically or through the release of evidence after his death. The impact on generations is astounding. Young artists today were raised on tales of industry exploitation but lacked evidence of illegal activity. That proof might be found in Tupac's purported materials, which would create a smoking gun moment that would require a radical reorganization of the music industry's production, distribution, and monetization processes. The entire infrastructure, from major labels to streaming services, may come under unprecedented scrutiny. The environment is ideal for an industrial revolution, which is why this time is especially risky for established powers. Sharing information has become more accessible thanks to social media. Federal prosecutors are encouraged to pursue high-profile cases that show the efficacy of the justice system, and younger generations demand accountability and transparency. Even previously untouchable individuals can be brought down thanks to a confluence of legal resources, technological advancements, and public pressure. Whether Tupac is physically alive in Cuba is not the most important question. It's whether his purported evidence and spiritual presence can bring about the cultural reckoning that hip-hop has long needed. Every influential person who built their empire on violence and exploitation would suddenly face existential threats if federal prosecutors actually had thorough records of criminal activity throughout the industry.
We have been a good friend. If you want to make it a relationship type thing, we have been there, and now we deserve our payback. It's like you got a friend that you don't never look out for. You know, you dressed up in jewels. Now America's...
Diddy and Jay-Z might be the most obvious targets, but they're probably only the first. Music journalists, radio hosts, entertainment attorneys, record executives, and even some musicians who engaged in or profited from corruption may soon be the subject of a federal investigation. The longest-kept secret in the music business, that success frequently necessitates cooperation with criminal elements, may finally come to light with legal repercussions. We seem to be on the brink of something greater than any previous scandal. The influence on hip-hop culture is already indisputable, regardless of whether Tupac makes a physical or spiritual comeback, or whether his evidence is found in federal databases or Cuban vaults. The industry's ability to withstand the truth that is finally coming to light after decades of meticulously preserved silence is the real question, not whether the reckoning will occur. As they say, truth tends to show up when we least expect it to. And in hip-hop, that truth may just come with Tupac Shakur's name on it for the very last time.
I honestly did not care whether I lived or died. But now, I can...
You think if he... you think if he didn't go to death row, would he still be alive?
It's hard to say.
I can't leave until this is straight. You know, I'm not I can't go until y'all really know what time it is.
We've all accepted the same version of Tupac's fate for almost 30 years. 6 days in the hospital, Vegas drive-by. Completed. The case is over. However, Tupac's real brother, Mr. Shakur, is currently sitting on Piers Morgan's show and essentially stating, "We've been fed a load of lies this whole time." This isn't just any YouTuber with an odd theory, it's family. This man who grew up with Tupac and knew him better than anyone else is pointing out that everything we believe to be true is total nonsense while gazing directly into the camera with a composed yet intense expression. Mapp doesn't believe him when Piers questions him about Diddy's denials. You know, all those times Diddy claimed he wasn't involved in Tupac's death. Not even close. He's not scared to voice his serious doubts in public. Years ago, Mapp told Diddy that the truth always surfaces. Diddy called him back in 2008 in an attempt to persuade the family that he was innocent. "We're going to see what the real truth is," McCree says as he sits there after 17 years. That isn't just conjecture. That person is more knowledgeable than he is revealing. It's evident in his eyes. Something more profound is at play here. And consider this. Would you be on national television questioning everything if your brother had been murdered and you genuinely accepted the official version? Most likely not. Closure is what you would want. You should move on. 3 decades later, however, McCree is still searching for answers. It's intriguing how cautious he is with his words. He isn't making outrageous claims or yelling conspiracy theories. With the accuracy of someone who knows exactly what he's doing, he's sowing doubtful seeds. And the timing? Diddy is currently being charged at the federal level. His entire empire is collapsing. It seems like the ideal moment for family members to start conversing. We're not saying Tupac is alive and chilling in Cuba, but when his own brother starts questioning the narrative we've accepted for decades, maybe it's time we started asking some serious questions too. Because if Mapp is correct, then everything we believe to be true about the history of hip-hop is going to be completely disproved. This is where the interesting part begins. It seems that all of the rumors linking Diddy to Tupac's death were keeping him up at night back in 2008. What does he do then? He picks up the phone and makes a direct call to the Shakur family.
The boy Puffy called me though. Puffy called me back in the day. He called me, he was like, "I just want you to know I ain't have nothing to do with your brothers. You know, I know who you are, but we never met."
Take a moment to consider that. 12 years after a murder, innocent people typically don't feel the need to call the victim's family to give an explanation. However, Diddy was so unsettled by rumors and street talk that he contacted radio host Big Boy to initiate contact with McCree. Imagine that call. Diddy is likely surrounded by his entire team, including possibly attorneys, and is adamantly denying any involvement in the shooting while attempting to persuade Tupac's brother of his innocence. The problem is that McCree didn't buy it. Not now, not then. His answer was spot on. The truth always comes out. Diddy's dreams are likely still plagued by these 4 words, and McCree was correct. Take a look at where we are in 2025. Federal racketeering charges have been brought against Diddy, his mansions have been raided, people who had never spoken before are speaking up, and the walls are closing in. Damage control was the goal of that 2008 phone call. Diddy believed he could make amends with the family and possibly even persuade them to publicly affirm his innocence. Rather, it went horribly wrong. Why? Because McCree saw through it. He accepted the denials and listened courteously, but he never really believed him. And now, 17 years later, he is essentially saying Diddy's story doesn't hold water on television.
Suge looks over, he sees you. He looks right at you. Yeah, he looks at me.
Why did Diddy feel the need to personally contact the victim's family if he was totally innocent and concerned about the rumors? False accusations are typically dismissed by innocent people who then go on with their lives. Diddy, however, was unable to ignore them. He knew he had to get ahead of the story because the whispers were becoming louder and people were beginning to piece it together. The problem is that you've already lost the game once you start frantically calling people to prove your innocence. And the truth is actually coming out. Mapp's prophecy is finally coming to pass. And here's where things get absolutely crazy. You are aware that Diddy has denied any role in Tupac's demise for decades. As it turns out, federal investigators have been hiding some damning evidence all along. In relation to Tupac's shooting, Diddy's name appears 47 times on covert police recordings. Furthermore, these aren't just rumors or idle chatter. These are official police interrogation recordings of Keefe D, the man currently accused of Tupac's murder. These accusations weren't merely murmured in a shadowy alley by Keefe D. He allegedly went into great detail about how Diddy offered millions of dollars for the heads of Tupac and Suge Knight while seated across from federal agents with recording equipment rolling. The exact phrase that appears repeatedly in these files is Diddy's purported statement, "I'll give anything for that dude's head." Now consider this rationally. If there was no solid evidence in these recordings, why would federal prosecutors keep them secret for decades? Given his own confessions, why would KVD's statements be deemed reliable enough to support a murder charge against him? The most bizarre aspect is that these recordings have been in evidence lockers for the entire time that Diddy was establishing his business, taking honors, and giving speeches advocating for harmony and peace. Every time he made a public appearance, denied anything, or asserted his innocence, those 47 mentions waited in the background. And now that Diddy is being investigated for federal racketeering charges and his entire business is being investigated, those old recordings no longer seem like historical documents. If you consider it, the timing is ideal. Using historical evidence to create pattern cases is a favorite tactic of federal prosecutors. What's to stop them from going back and linking it to alleged crimes from the 1990s if they can demonstrate that Diddy was operating a criminal enterprise at the time?
Puffy called and said, "Was that us?" And you didn't say nothing.
I didn't say nothing. Yeah, you're right.
There's also, you go into the book, that apparently there was supposed to be $1 million.
Keefe's in-depth accounts of murderous schemes and million-dollar prizes weren't merely idle chatter. They might have been the last piece of evidence linking Diddy to the largest unsolved murder in music history. Furthermore, Diddy's meticulously crafted defense of his innocence will disintegrate more quickly than his business empire if those recordings are ever played in court. Furthermore, when federal agents raided Diddy's mansions, they weren't even searching for evidence of Tupac. They were looking for contemporary things like financial crimes and racketeering, but sometimes the most significant findings come about by pure happenstance. Documents labeled with the word Cuban were discovered by agents deep within Diddy's personal files, sparking a flurry of conspiracy theories. Additionally, keep in mind that Assata Shakur, Tupac's aunt, has been in Cuban exile since 1984 before you dismiss this as mere paperwork. Coincidences do occur, but nothing in a federal investigation this size is truly a coincidence, particularly when it relates to decades of theories that Tupac fled to Cuba after staging his death. Do you recall Tupac's former bodyguard, Michael Nice? Under Castro's personal protection, he had been saying for years that he assisted in the smuggling of Tupac out of Las Vegas, switching bodies at the hospital and setting up a private jet to Barbados prior to the last destination, Cuba. Until Nice promised to release proof and then mysteriously disappeared, everyone wrote him off as insane.
Tupac Shakur didn't actually die in '96 and is still alive and well.
Tupac became a protected asset of the Cuban government after Bice insisted that Castro personally authorize the operation. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? However, federal agents are now locating Cuban references in Diddy's most private documents. Consider the implications of that. Diddy may have been aware of Tupac's survival or actively involved in concealing it if he retained records linking him to Cuban activities. If Diddy wasn't keeping an eye on someone or something on that island, why else would he have Cuban files? For years, locals in Havana have been reporting sightings of a man with Tupac's build. He would move through side streets, duck into cafes, and disappear before anyone could get a good picture. Eyewitness reports, shaky video, and ongoing rumors of a legendary person living in plain sight.
Tupac's legend is that he'd been shot 5 times and survived before that fateful night here in Las Vegas in 1996. And because of that, Tupac's legacy has always been linked to Vegas.
Here's the frightening possibility, though. We're looking at more than a murder cover-up if Diddy's files include correspondence with Cuban contacts, financial records of international payments, or surveillance reports on Tupac's activities. We're examining a multi-decade international conspiracy. Diddy may have been aware of Tupac's existence all along and assisted in the largest deception in hip-hop history, as evidenced by the Cuba files. Furthermore, the information that federal prosecutors uncover in those files could disprove everything we believe to be true about September 1996. We now discuss some extremely strange events that occurred in the wake of Tupac's passing, because things don't quite add up the way they should when you start looking through the official documents. The coroner's report comes first. This document should be extremely reliable, right? Medical specialists, exact measurements, and official records. However, Tupac's weight and height were listed inaccurately for some reason. We are discussing fundamental physical attributes that are routinely measured by medical examiners and hospital staff. While errors do occur, you would think that someone would double-check the paperwork when working with the world's most well-known rapper, particularly when everyone is observing and inquiring. However, this is where things start to get really weird. After working on the case, the cremator who allegedly handled Tupac's body retired right away. That is, he completed his work and vanished from the industry forever. Who does that? After managing the most significant case of their career, who retires? Then there is the actual shooting in Vegas. We're referring to September 7th, the night following the Tyson fight, which was one of the busiest nights on the Strip with thousands of people everywhere, including cars, pedestrians, and tourists. As with cameras. However, the shooter was not visible to any of the onlookers. No one was able to see the gunman or the car clearly. How could that be? For years, Suge Knight, who was actually seated next to Tupac at the time, has been giving clues that something is off. He bluntly asked TMZ back in 2014, "Why do you think no one has been arrested? Because Tupac is still alive."
I ain't the killed Tupac, I'm the protected Tupac. Yeah. But at the same time, bitch ass Puffy can give him a star, and every rat in the world said he didn't want to kill Tupac.
Take a moment to consider that statement. Suge was present. He survived the shooting. He is implying that Tupac is not truly dead, even though he is aware of what actually transpired that evening. When combined, these seemingly disparate inconsistencies begin to form a pattern. Incorrect data on official records. Important witnesses going silent or vanishing. There were no trustworthy witnesses to the actual shooting. After working on the case, medical personnel retire right away. Either the most inept investigation in criminal history is underway, or someone was making a concerted effort to keep the truth from being revealed. Perhaps we will finally get some solid answers regarding what truly transpired in Vegas on September 7, 1996, given Diddy's ongoing legal issues and the numerous federal investigations. The thing about Diddy's current circumstances that suddenly makes all of these old conspiracy theories seem much more plausible is that federal prosecutors aren't pursuing him for petty offenses. They're portraying Bad Boy Records as a full-fledged criminal enterprise that pretended to be a record label for decades. We are discussing allegations of sexual coercion and racketeering, which sound more like organized crime than hip-hop. Furthermore, it appears that Bad Boy was doing more than just dropping hits as more information becomes available. It was conducting a scheme to intimidate, control, and silence
that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice.
Everyone used to make jokes about those notorious freak-off parties. Do you remember them? They weren't just crazy celebrity parties, it turns out. Prosecutors claim that Diddy filmed everything during these alleged staged marathons, coerced people into humiliating situations, and then used the footage as leverage. Consider the psychology of that. One of the most influential men in music is accused of producing compromising material and keeping it over people's heads for years. Anyone who attempted to voice their opinions or cause issues would suddenly find themselves in hot water. This is where it relates to the Tupac case. What could Diddy have accomplished in the 1990s, when the stakes were even higher and law enforcement was less involved, if he was indeed running this type of control system in the 2000s and 2010s? According to former co-workers, there was no real way to say no to Diddy in this world, where favors quickly turned into debts that could quickly become ugly. Witnesses are becoming quiet, files are going missing. Those who attempted to speak up either withdrew their remarks or disappeared forever. Does that sound familiar? Because the Vegas investigation was just like that. Important witnesses fell silent. The evidence appeared to disappear. Despite having several leads and possible suspects, the case stagnated for decades. However, federal agents are currently using cutting-edge investigative techniques and limitless resources to comb through every aspect of Diddy's business. What are they discovering too? Missing witnesses in cases that are ongoing. The third victim has completely disappeared and is not even reachable by her own attorney. Imagine what might have happened in 1996 when Diddy's operation was younger, more hungry, and far more desperate to establish dominance in the hip-hop industry, if this is how witnesses vanish in 2025 with federal protection and contemporary security. It's possible that the same strategies that allegedly kept people quiet about the Vegas shooting are still in use today, woven into the bigger framework of what prosecutors are referring to as a criminal enterprise. Perhaps the Vegas investigation was more than just inept. Perhaps those with significant resources and risky connections were behind its sabotage. Let's take a moment to consider the logistics involved. We're not claiming that Tupac actually staged his death in order to flee to Cuba, but if he did, it's not a straightforward operation that one or two people could execute.
We have a guy that said he saw Pac and took this picture, and it's trending like a on internet.
It would take a lot of coordination to move and protect someone as well known as Tupac. We are discussing allies, sponsors, and global intelligence networks, the type of operation that crosses national borders and involves individuals at the highest echelons of organized crime and government. Consider the 1990s in Cuba. Fidel Castro remained in power and was accused of ignoring the United States by providing sanctuary to American dissidents and fugitives. Assata Shakur, Tupac's aunt, had already been living there in exile since 1984 following her escape from a prison in New Jersey. Therefore, the Cuban government's protection of well-known American fugitives was already precedent-setting. This is where things become complicated, though. Castro's intelligence services would have been involved if Tupac had truly been protected by the Cuban government. The Cuban equivalent of the CIA, the DGI, doesn't merely shield foreign celebrities without expecting anything in return. What would they have desired from Tupac? Details, value of propaganda, monetary recompense? Diddy wasn't merely covering up a murder if he was aware of this arrangement, as those Cuban documents imply. Consider all the individuals who would have had to remain silent for almost 30 years. Medical examiners, police investigators, airport security, immigration officials, Cuban government officials, international intelligence agents, and hospital employees in Vegas. We are discussing a network of silence that extends across several nations and governmental organizations. Unless all parties involved are aware that speaking would be extremely harmful to their health, such an operation cannot remain hidden. Furthermore, those who assisted in maintaining this deception had significant resources and a strong incentive to ensure that the truth was never revealed if Diddy was indeed working with global networks to conceal Tupac's survival. Not only could the Cuban documents demonstrate Tupac's survival, but they could also reveal a global plot by law enforcement, criminal groups, and powerful figures in the music business to seize control of one of the most valuable stories in entertainment history. And we're not just looking at the largest cover-up in hip-hop history if that's what federal prosecutors discover when they look through those files. International espionage is what we are examining.